Noisy buttons up.
Well,
Welcome to the Town Council meeting for July 10, 2018. We'll open the meeting by pledge allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a moment of silence and reflect on our duties here. Remember all our first responders and military personnel home today. Thank you. In accordance with Mass General laws, we're taping the meeting. Is anyone else taping the meeting? Public comments? Any? None?
Oh, Teresa Baraki was supposed. Are you Teresa? Ah. Yes, she was. You can come up.
Come on up.
All right, guys.
Good.
Good evening.
Long time no see, most of you. On behalf of myself, my own photography and marketing company, and all the other politicians that walked in the parade, we just wanted to say thank you for including us in the parade. So I have pictures for everyone. We did take a group picture, which is actually really nice because we have some senators, some state reps, and then all of town council and school committee all together. So I have a copy for everyone, and then I even have.
You couldn't Photoshop me in?
I couldn't. There wasn't a spot. I mean,
A little stick figure?
Yeah, we
or
can slide
Joe?
you in with a Sharpie pen.
but we have a banner for you guys as well. So I don't know if you want to hang it up in town hall or whatever you want to do with it, but it's actually quite large. Want to help me?
say.
The Legion.
Put a backing on it
You want to see it?
darts at.
Yeah.
Favorite politician for $5? The front door of
Okay.
town hall?
I'm going to need help. But yeah.
I think we should make it big enough to go on the roof.
You go that way.
Whoops. Sure, I get, my hand gets dropped. That came out nice. That's really nice. Great
Very
picture.
nice.
So there are a lot of nice people in there, right? I thought it was a nice one like that. So, I mean, we could probably put you in right here between Eric,
It's okay.
you know, and
There you go.
everything.
But you have to put one of those hats on him, like
Yeah.
at the end.
I think it's a uniform night.
It is. Oh, baseball?
For you, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In conjunction with that, if we're doing council comments.
Go ahead.
It was I thought it was a wonderful parade. We had fun. It was a hot day, but we had a great time, and it was sort of fun being behind the end zone militia because I love to see people
that was pretty
jump out of their skin when they don't realize that they're shooting off their muskets, and it was nice.
And also, if you don't follow Teresa on Facebook, Teresa,
I'm sorry?
thank you. I tell everybody, follow you on Facebook. Your pictures were incredible.
Oh,
do
thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah, we had like 250 of them, so if you weren't in one, you were probably in about 20. So, you know, I tried to tag everybody that I'm friends with on Facebook, but social media, you know, it gets around. We have quite a few pictures, and a lot of people were responsive to it. So hopefully we'll be able to get you guys some funding as well on the state level. I know that I was talking to Gordon Smith about the high school. That was a big hot subject with him. So we were thinking about maybe putting together some meetings as well coming up after the primary. So hopefully we can do that too.
Good.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council comments?
Yes, I move that we take agenda item 8C under new business out of order and place next on council business. 8C is under new business, reorganization of town council officers per Article 2, Section 3 of the Charter.
Seconded.
Let's move to say any further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Wants to kick us off.
Oh, I nominate
That's fine.
Kathy Hill as president of the council.
Do you have to second it? Do we?
We need a
I'll
second.
second, I'll second it.
Second.
Move to say all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody else interested?
I'm interested in the vice.
I'll nominate Michael Kane as vice president of the council for one more year.
I'll second that.
Let's move to say any further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. You did a good job for 2 years.
Thank you.
Swamp Speeds?
No, that's good. Okay, thank you for your support. The next item on the agenda is our town manager's report. Denise.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Another a great 4th of July celebration is completed. Hooray. Everybody that had anything to do with it, I'm sure, is really relieved. It was a hot week, pretty much, but a great time. Thank you to everyone that helped get everything done safely and efficiently. I know there were questions about the delay in the fireworks. The technicians from the fireworks company got there late. When the state fire marshal inspected it, he said something like, those are supposed to be 4 inches apart, and those are supposed to be 3 inches apart. And they said, oh, it's kind of too late now. No, it's not. You got to do something. So that ended up causing them to have to redo stuff. Then they had to redo the wiring that was attached to all of that. So it was a little bit tricky. But at the end of the day, except for the time delay, the fireworks were excellent. The carnival had mostly great weather. There wasn't a lot of rain. And there was great attendance, and at the parade it was, as always, spectacular. You'll see on the dates to remember that September 9th, East Long Meadow will be hosting a Military Family Appreciation Day. And you'll see the name morph because I've seen it Military Family Day, Family Appreciation Day. It started because I was asking questions of our veterans agent about his outreach to our veterans here in East Long Meadow. The group, Rick Green is the chairman of the group that organizes the veterans agents, different towns that he represents, said, maybe we can do something. I said, that's great. I had Brian Doe come and see me. He's from Springfield Vet Center, I think, and he knew of somebody else, and it has grown into something that will be a picnic kind of event. Big Y is donating all the food. The disabled veterans van is going to be there. The Veterans Center bus that you saw in the parade is going to be there. I've spoken with the Lions, and they're going to bring their iMobile, and we expect to have a lot of information for the veterans to be able to really do more than what we're doing now. And it will be a family day. I talked to the rec department about a bounce house or something. It'll be at Heritage Park. So it's something to look forward to, and I'm hoping that this will be the kickoff of a first year of something that we have more than 1 year. Sarah and I expect to present this year's 5-year plan to the council in August. The ambulance operation is progressing smoothly, with patients' reports being transferred efficiently and correctly to the hospitals, which is a big deal. The fire chief, said that is a big deal. So there were a total of 35 EMS runs during the fire department's operating hours this first week and a half. I think he gave this to me on Friday, so it was really kind of the first week. I asked him, so if there were 35, why did we only catch 14? That's because the others were ALS, Advanced Life Support. So we had 14 that were basic level service, and of those, 8 were transported to the hospital. So it's off to a good, steady start. We are 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it seems to be moving pretty smoothly. It's a credit to all of East Long Meadow leadership that this is going off the way it is. After 21 plus years of dedicated service in our Public Works Department, Shirley Tancredi will be retiring August 2nd. We wish Shirley a happy and healthy retirement and thank her for her many years of service to East Long Meadow. Finally, congratulations to the council on completing a productive and successful year for East Long Meadow. I'm sure the upcoming one will be equally busy, and as a refresher, I've incorporated in this packet the Robert's Rules, just a summary of them, conflict of interest, and open meeting law. So, thank you all, and you've got, mark your calendar, National Night Out is August 7th, and September 9th is the Military Family Appreciation Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Under number 6, approval of minutes, you have before you the June 26th open session meeting minutes. If you haven't had a chance, if you take a moment to look it over, and at that point, I'll entertain a motion for approval and/or edits to the June 26 minutes.
I'll move that we approve the June 26, 2018 minutes with no further edits.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Under communication, correspondence, and announcements, Subcommittee, Mr. Anderson, anything to?
Nope. Pastor
Okay.
Gastric.
I'd like to make a comment. I ran into some individuals last night that heard about openings on the Conservation Commission through your Facebook page, and
Okay.
without that reading, they would have been unaware that there were 2 openings, and both of those people came forward and filled those vacant positions, so
Oh, thank you.
people are looking at what you're putting out.
Good. Well, hopefully we'll keep that momentum coming.
Good.
Thank you.
Good job.
Good job, Don.
Is there any update under the Planning Matters Subcommittee?
Nothing at this point. Only thing is just a quick parenthetical comment. I talked to Connie today, and because a matter we voted on at our last meeting regarding, and forgive me for forgetting the name of the place on Shaker Road.
Wandering Spirit.
Wandering Spirit, yeah.
We perhaps didn't realize, and it's right now going to the planning board for a site plan waiver, and instead they need a special permit because it's, regardless of what they're, how they encapsulate and present it, it's a bar. And if it's a bar, we don't allow taverns in
Right.
East Long Meadow, and that means it has to serve food. So I had a good conversation, not only with Connie, I had a conversation with the chair, George Kingston, and I can't speak for all of us, but I like to think we're all on the same page recognizing that, so that's about it.
So to follow with that then, at our last meeting, we approved the wine and malt license to sell, correct?
Right, so what has
We'll
to
have to
happen?
revisit that and just reverse that decision?
Not necessarily. If they can come in with an approved special permit from the planning board with hours of operation, demonstrating food service, having a parking plan, as a restaurant, if they're willing to do that, then we're fine. If they come back with any deviations to that, then, I'm paraphrasing somebody in the audience, no, then it gets negated.
So, just to add to what you've experienced, George Kingston also called me, and I'm only adding to it because he was quite concerned that the council not feel that he and his board are in any way undercutting what the council, his responsibilities and approvals are. And I said, absolutely, in this case, that would not be the perception.
More than once, when I had communication with George this morning, I commended him for doing that.
For
And
picking up on
that's
it.
exactly why we want
As
a
did
planning
I.
board, to let us know. The work, that's the beauty of our government. We work with each other. We try to make it happen, and we cross-check each other, and not be islands. So this to me was, I commended him for it.
Good. So we'll wait to hear from planning.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, number 3, licensing matter subcommittee report. Right now, that committee is also so much in recess. We've pretty well addressed all of the licensing fee rates that we would have purview over, and they're set for the balance of this year and for next year as well. The general bylaw subcommittee report.
Nothing, no
Nothing.
updates.
Okay.
Could I ask that at the next agenda, maybe we put on Town Manager's Review Subcommittee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, under item 7B, salary survey update by our Human Resource Director, Ms. Decker. The floor is yours.
How are you? Good. I'm not real good at doing
Actually,
this.
the
I'm
floor
gonna warn
belongs to
ya.
Bruce Fanny Presley.
Yeah, actually, yes. Mr. Fenny owns
He owns the floor.
And all the problems it has.
So I included in the package a copy of the final report from the Collins Management Center and kind of gave you an outline of the steps that we've been taking since April of 2017 regarding this project. And did you want me just to go over it step by step and you can ask questions, or how would you like me to do that for you?
Sure.
Just go step by step? Okay, so back in April of 2017, the Human Resource Department provided the Collins Center with all of our current job descriptions, as many as we could locate. A lot of them were outdated. They were throughout every department, so it was kind of hard to get them all together. It did take some time, but eventually we did that. Then the Collins Center came to East Long Meadow. Mary Icardi is our representative who is working with us, and she presented 2 sessions to explain to the non-union employees, department heads, and those who are not in the union, and a second one for the town employees union, the East Long Meadow Town Employees Union, what the process would be. First, it would be, like we said, get your job descriptions together. They were given a questionnaire, which was very specific as to their job. It was about, I'd say, probably 8 to 10 pages long. Once all of those were turned in, the department heads also saw them to make sure they were on target to what each individual employee was doing. Once they were completed, I sent them back to the Collins Center. They reviewed them and compared what other municipalities similar in size and likeness to East Long Meadow, and came up with job descriptions. Once they came up with that draft, we sent them back again to all the department heads and the employees to go over them to see if we missed anything or we needed to somehow tweak or add or take something out. So that was a very long process, and then that was in June of 2017. I'm sorry, I kind of go really quick. So in September and October of 2017, the new job descriptions did come. And I think everybody had seen them and was good with them. We only had a few that we had to make some corrections to. And then in March this year, we received the final report from Mary Icardi, which included all her recommendations of what we needed to do to get everybody equal and have all of the job descriptions updated and the salary and wages consistent throughout the non-union employees and the East Long Meadow Town Employees Union. And right now we are meeting with the union, the East Long Meadow Town Employees Union, to go over their job descriptions and have them understand the process, and if they have any questions, we're going through all of that with them. Some of Denise and myself and Sarah have met to go over some of the placements where they are in the new grading system, and we are still working a little bit on that. So we're just about finished, and that's about it in a nutshell. So.
Good. Any questions for Karen?
I will say that this process here, it seems like a long time. This is the 3rd one that I have done, salary and compensation study, and this is probably the only one that's been done in about a year. Usually it takes 1.5 to 2 years for these things to go. So the Collins Center worked really hard along with Denise, myself, and Sarah, and the department heads to get this accomplished.
I just got one question. Do you think it's going to be an issue with the unions to, I mean, I don't know offhand, not knowing each individual person's status as of now, if these new figures are increasing salaries, decreasing salaries, you know. So
nobody is going to lose any
Okay.
money at all. If it's somewhere where they're getting a little bit more than where they actually fall, according to the report, they're going to be red circled or red lined, so they'll stay stagnant until it catches up. So nobody's going to lose money. They've all been told that right from the very start.
Okay.
As far as their concerns about placement within the grades, that's what we're meeting with them now, trying to figure out and make sure that everybody is at least on the same page and good with with where they are.
And it's falling at the same time as we're doing union negotiations, so it really is timely. That's why we were pushing to get it all at the same time. So we couldn't really do salary increases if they were really way out of whack.
Right.
We would just be adding to the whole,
Yep.
problem. So it ends up, there are some that are 50 cents under, there are some that are $6 under, I think.
Yeah, that's about the
one that's-
most, yeah.
That has a big, deficit, and some of them that are redlined, that were just, they're at the top of where this range that is created, that has been recommended by the Collins Center. So they seem to be, the TEU seems to be understanding it. It's taken
Couple meetings.
a couple months maybe of talking, first doing the narrative, then doing the salary piece, because as any group, they were thinking, because they had like 3 years of anticipation, we are gonna have a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow, and it turns
Yeah.
out there really isn't.
Our salaries are pretty comparable to other municipalities that are around that we were compared to, so.
And they were quite surprised that some of them were almost like right on, and those were the ones that we've just done. Because
Yes.
any new position, we've been examining where they fall.
Well, that's a good thing.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say,
And-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, having a salary survey done and in place is more than not the industry standard now for
It is.
employees.
This, like I said, this is the
Municipal
third
employees.
municipality I've worked in, this is the third one I've done, so.
We had enough money because this was funded by a grant. It was actually bargained in the last union contract, TEU contract. So the TEU was going to be getting it anyway, but we also had enough money, it was a community compact grant, that we were able to do the managers as well. So those were the ones that they were saying, these are pretty right on. There's a lot of new managers, so it all worked out.
You mentioned that within the grades, is there gonna be like a step level?
Yes. 12?
Yes, there's 12 steps, and I believe there's 8 grades, A through I think. So, I didn't bring that piece with me, but there's a gradual, every year you go up a step, and I believe it's a 2% increase every
2 or
one,
2.5,
every.
something
Yeah.
like that,
So it makes it even. It gives a lot of the individuals who are already at the top step additional room to grow. So it really is a good thing. So they're not staying stagnant, and every year they're going to get something besides whatever the contract allows for. So
And before, there were, how many grades? There were like.
probably like 20 to 25,
There
and
were
half
like
of them
3
weren't being
people in
used.
one grade, and then 5 people in another grade, and
Yeah.
then 1 in another. It was, so this folded in a lot of them. I think that's more the question, is, well, how come I'm in the same bargaining group as these guys now, where I wasn't before?
Right.
So how are you able to track all that? You got a lot of employees, like where does the Muni system allow for any of this?
Yeah, the Munis system shows us where they are currently, so that I can compare it to the wage scale, and I take where they are currently and then place them within the new grade system and steps. Usually it's about a step above where they are right now, because they're not exact to the penny, so that's why some of them are only a couple cents difference, and, some of them are a little bit more. The ones that are low, they're at step 1, and they have 12 years to grow into the end line, so.
Because of most of our employees are part of a union, are we in compliance with the new pay equity law?
Yes, we are, and this report does address that. I believe there's a paragraph in here that they wrote that we are comparable for all of the wage.
Anybody out of whack, or that was all good?
No, we were really good.
Good, excellent. Okay.
So I'm guessing when you put a pencil to it going forward with our budget, that there won't be any drastic, significant modifications that we need to make?
I think there's a total of increase adjustments of 70,000 that were, they were anticipated. We probably will be taking them, well, we'll be coming to the council for where we're gonna take that. But it'll be a one-time sort of equity increase.
And when would that be roughly?
It
Fall?
depends on when, no, it's likely to be before then, hopefully. We're close to We've
We're very
completed the
close.
fire contract, the police contract. This was the next one in line, and I think we're probably a couple of meetings away. We're really to the salary piece, and
And they
we've
were
met a
waiting
couple
for the
times,
results
yeah.
of this and the comparisons to be able to go forward.
So it could be
with all of it.
September, something like that.
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's right, because we only meet once in August, so.
Right, probably September. We're really close to being done, so.
Yeah.
By the way, are all of our groups on bi-weekly pay now, or is there still one on weekly?
One-
Still one.
One that is pushing very hard to stay, and that's the Public Works. Those guys.
The troublemakers.
Yeah, I mean, we should bargain that out. I mean, it's just too much work.
We are.
We're
It-
trying.
It is
It's
a
just too much
proposal.
work for the payroll staff. It's ridiculous to be doing that. It's a
That's one
one-time
of our top
adjustment,
things.
and then everyone,
You get used to it.
yeah, 99% of the population works on a bi-weekly.
We're working on it.
Okay,
Another-
excellent.
A question, with our on-call firefighters, where do they fall in this process? They're town employees.
They're not being
not
addressed through
union.
this?
They're not part of the union?
No.
So
No.
they're not part of this
No.
salary
Not at
breakout?
all.
Okay.
I think not too long ago, Chief, was it this?
It
Yes.
was
This
yes.
budget,
this
this
budget
spoke
season,
about
we
the
gave them-
hourly
Yeah, we
rate
made
for
Right, which was
on-call.
good. I
We
mean,
gave
they
them
hadn't
20
received-
cents more an
Yeah.
hour, I
It was
think.
adjusted.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
hadn't
it's-
received anything. I didn't see it in here, and that's why I
No,
asked.
they're not
it's
part of the
They're
union,
not a
so.
union. no.
Okay.
But he did.
But it's been
Yeah, it's been
addressed.
addressed.
You all approved a
I'm
20
getting older, I
20 cents an
imagine
hour, I
sometimes.
think,
Increase, right.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful way to be.
Sometimes
Any other questions for Karen? That's a huge piece of work. Well done, thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. If anybody has any additional questions, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Item 7C, the municipal separate storm sewer system, also known as MS4.
Yes.
Presentation by Mr. Fenny, our DPW.
I'm actually
Superintendent.
waiting for my guest speaker, Mr. Simeon. He is stuck in traffic on the Mass Pike.
Oh, I think you
Ooh.
should just take it, Bruce.
So, he's gonna be the, like you said, the bearer of bad news, or just kind of go over the whole
Sounds like a snow
process
job
of
to
what
me.
needs for our community. So I'd rather wait for him, to get here.
He's the specialist.
He's the specialist.
How far out is he?
He's still on the pike?
No, he should hopefully be here in the next 20 minutes or so.
Okay, well,
So we want to make a motion.
I can make a motion to
Motion
take,
to go out of
eight.
order.
Leave 7C
8A.
and move to 8A, only to return for.
Although, we have a motion to go out of order and set 7C aside for now, waiting for our speaker. There is a motion on the floor to move directly to 8A. Is there a second?
second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, under orders of the day, licensing matters. Mr. Florence, there are none?
None.
Okay.
A rarity, none for this
It is a
week.
rarity.
After the.
Everybody's partied out. This is a quiet week all around
Or
America,
on vacation.
perhaps, or on vacation.
Right.
8B, old business, discussion of combined dispatch. Mr. Manley, you asked to have this put on the agenda yesterday?
There was supposed to be discussion about it wasn't put on yesterday, it was put on prior to that, because there was some confusion about when we left executive session, whether the direction was to not continue or to continue, so apparently, some of us thought that the poll indicated that we were not gonna continue with that, 6-1.
Yep.
Other people don't feel that way, so it's up for discussion.
Wouldn't
Well,
that,
just a clarification that there was no voting that happened?
Right, I just said the poll,
yeah.
Yeah, good,
the consensus.
right.
Should we talk now or go back in executive session with it? Do you care?
Honestly, I don't think there's anything that needs to be discussed in executive session. I mean, I'm completely comfortable discussing it here now. We're not talking about contractual obligations or anything like
Or
that, so I
negotiating
think we should stay in
tactics.
open.
It should be open.
As long as, exactly, as long as we stay away from the verbiage of the potential agreement itself, we're not, I don't believe we're violating anything by having a generic discussion in open session. But to tag along to Joe and Kevin's remarks, we entered into a sort of a straw poll, and as Mr. Manley has said, that it is not legal in an executive session for any body to conduct a vote. Any formal vote has to be conducted in open session. And thinking back to when the council had the opportunity to take part in a different dispatch organization back in the summer and fall, through Chicopee was kind of hosting a collaboration of that. We did, as a council, have an opportunity to look at a contract and to get a written opinion from Mr. Donahue, our counsel, as well as we did on November 28th take a formal vote to give direction to the town manager to withdraw from that collaboration. That said, since there is a misunderstanding among the council about where we stood consensus or not consensus-wise after the last meeting, I would like to, since we don't have an actual contract before us or any written report from our new counsel, Mr. Maynard, and I believe, well, I can't disclose that because that was said in executive session, but until we can see minutes of what may have gone on, I'd like to propose a subcommittee to work together, taking advice from Denise as well as any of our department heads that have played into it prior in the run-up to this arrangement. So, and I would task them with meeting ASAP and trying to get a very clear direction on where this council wants to go. To instruct our manager to continue to participate or instruct her to respectfully step away from the dispatch proposal.
Madam President, so as far as contract review, and maybe if you wouldn't mind kind of weighing in this, so I don't believe it's within our purview to necessarily review a contract, but maybe a summary of the contract, a highlight, an understanding, so that we can advise, because we're not going to approve a contract. That's beyond our scope.
If I said approve, review a contract,
Yeah.
I didn't mean that. I
Okay.
meant review the circumstances, I should say that. Review the information in front of us and take advice from council and our manager.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
if you're
go
looking
ahead.
for me to weigh in at all, I guess my sense was that there was a clear consensus coming out of the last executive session that, I mean, my review of the charter indicates that it's the town manager's decision ultimately whether to enter into the contract that was being discussed. Again, my view was that the consensus was clear and the directions to me as council were clear. If there's some rethinking of that to be had, so be it, and I'll wait for further instruction.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for anyone else. You know, I think this is a good lesson learned. We haven't gone to executive session many times. Like, I don't know, that's probably the first time we did that in 6 months, 8 months. I mean, it hasn't been very often.
We've probably done executive session 4 or 5 times in this last fiscal year.
So it hasn't been
At
very
the
often.
most.
And I think, for me, what I would like, the way I consume information is, you know, I need something beforehand to process. So as we're discussing with multiple department heads their opinions about their position on something, I'm using that information, but it's really the first time I'm hearing it. So I think as we go into this, you know, looking back on it, I think we probably could have handled that a little better, because we could have had some information up front, had questions prepared, asked things, and you know, maybe thought through it a little bit better, because we walked away. I read the executive minutes. I think that they were spot on as far as I'm concerned, but we're not even approving them today. You know, so I just think in the future, I'd like some sense of why we're going into executive session, some key bullet points, the summary, overview. I don't need to be a contract
Be a
expert
contract.
because I'm not approving a contract. I'm trying to give opinions and direction, but I need information so that I can process and then repeat. So I think, you know, we probably botched that a little bit and rushed. We might come to the same conclusion. I don't know. So it sounds like maybe there's an opportunity to just look once more, think through it, process information, and then make a decision in open session and move on.
Well, there was obviously a meeting yesterday, so why don't they tell us what happened at that meeting? There was a meeting with the Board of Selectmen in Hampden yesterday, so what was the content of that meeting?
I was invited to that meeting, but I was not allowed into the session. We waited 15 minutes, and there were 3 councilmen in there.
I would take your recommendation and move the subcommittee to...
I'm asking what the content of the meeting was. What was the content of yesterday's
I
meeting?
don't think, at this point now, that's gonna verge onto matter that needs to stay in executive session.
So there was an executive discussion yesterday with members of the council to talk about a contract that's the town manager's purview to do under the charter. So we violated the charter by meeting with the Board of Selectmen to discuss a contract?
Mr. Manley, my understanding was that you and Ms. Menard were both invited to that meeting.
We were. We
And you
waited
accepted at 4:30 in the afternoon to be there.
No, I accepted the week
Okay.
before.
Well,
think
so
this is
let's
a
not
subject
belabor
for
the point,
executive.
because this,
This is not.
I would go
Moving on.
back
This
to
is
what
not.
Mr. Ford said. I'd be the first to say it. I think we got ahead of ourselves. There was a misstep during executive session on June 26th. We should never have run with the idea of a straw poll, because you can't take those, and we did. The
Yes,
good
you
news
can.
is, it's not irreparable. We didn't enter into any agreements. We haven't spent money.
Were there any agreements last night with Hampden?
There were
I
no,
don't think there could be.
there can't
How
be.
is there
There can't be,
agreement?
because the board has, you know.
We can't enter into agreements
Besides the fact
until,
that the meeting was not
be-
properly noticed to begin with.
And to be bluntly honest, some people on the board didn't even know about the meeting,
Right.
so. I found out from a Hampden selectman.
Yeah, and, you know, listen, I've had the opportunity to talk to a few of you, and these are teachable moments, you know. I mean, you know, we think we're all moving in the right direction to do what's in the best interest of the town, but sometimes we need to take pause, and I'm one that sometimes needs a reminder to take pause and not be so quick to react. I mean, you know, we need to process information. I mean, I'm in Paul's, you know, neck of the woods. I didn't know there was an option to go to a meeting. So, you know, it just seems like two different fractions are not communicating. And at the end of the day, I think it made the situation worse temporarily. Now we have to work even harder to fix it and, you know, kind of get to a point where Denise is processing information, she's providing us information, and we can make a decision and put this to bed, so that we don't keep making missteps and, you know, ultimately, if it's a good business decision, great. If it's not, we move on, we have a plan B, we're ready to execute a plan B.
right, the core of the matter is this dispatch proposal a good business decision for the citizens of East Long Meadow, and nothing else?
And that's
There's
understood.
a lot more to it.
Well, you know,
There's
listen,
a lot more to it.
and there may be, and I'm not privy to any of that, I would just say in the future, if a situation like that ever arises, that we need communication to the full council, and that, you know, I think if I was aware that that meeting was supposed to happen, I would have said, don't go. That would have been my recommendation. We don't need to acquiesce to anything that they're doing at this point. We weren't ready to make a decision to, like, who was even representing us at that meeting.
So let me clarify that meeting. I received notice 2 days after the last council meeting that there was going to be an executive session and that I was going to be invited. As the person doing the contract, that would be appropriate for me to go and speak to my counterparts who are the authorities to sign a contract. I said that tentatively I would agree. That was 2 days after the last council meeting. Tentatively, I will agree. I spoke to the president of the council because you can't have everybody there. First, it was executive session, and secondly, you know, you can't have a whole quorum in there. So I thought it's,
Just to touch on that, the chiefs were not available.
and the chiefs
The
were
chiefs
not
were not
available.
available.
One is on vacation, and the
One is
other was not available. So, I, in safety, wanted somebody in the room with me, but you can't, so I invite the president. That's gonna be makes no difference who the president is, whether it's Kevin or Kathy or Paul or Tom. I felt that it was probably less appropriate to have Mike because Mike is an employee of Hampden. So that's why I did not include Mike. And the rest of the council, I can't pick and choose. That would be up to Paul up to the president to say if there's somebody else that he thinks should come along. But we needed to be careful that we didn't have a quorum. We got there at 5 of 6 last night, and the meeting was already going on. And we waited 15 minutes in the hallway. And I was told by the recording secretary, not once, but twice, to stand back.
I find those facts to be inaccurate.
Well, they're not.
Well, that's your
They're not.
opinion.
And that's
All
your
right.
That's
opinion.
your opinion.
Gentlemen.
That's your opinion.
All right.
You shouldn't even be involved in it. You should have been recused a long time ago.
Kevin,
You should be out.
so that said, are there any other counselors that want to express any information?
Well, I have to agree with our town council in the sense that, you know, when we created the charter, because we have people watching on TV, just understand, we took the place, the council, took the place of town meeting. We also incorporated certain limited functions of the Board of Selectmen into our job description, including liquor licenses and so forth. So we're the purse, money side. The negotiations of our strong town manager position is the town manager. The town manager, in effect, whether we like it or not, that's the charter. That's the law of our local land, is the one who negotiates the contract. Our strength is with the purse strings. If she puts a contract together and we go, we don't think so, we don't fund it. And that's where our control is. So the matter from that last meeting was, the way it started off was, let's see if we can add a couple weeks of discussion. Then we heard concerns from our police and fire and so forth, and the word coming back that some of the original discussion, I'm trying to be very cryptic, was not the way it is in the present. So the way I understood this, and it was very clear in the minutes of the town meeting, I mean in the minutes of the executive session, was this is a non-binding, it's just getting a pulse for what we would like. That was it. My thought was, you know what, if the terms are being changed, if that's the way they're coming in, then at the moment, we're done with them, let them come back and say, this is what, come back to us with something. And that's what I was voting on. I wasn't voting on the onset, and again, I'm using the word vote in a very loose way, because we did not engage in any vote. It was just a, Kevin going, what's your feel? What are you guys thinking? And that's it. And we were very clear, we are not voting in executive session. And my feeling was, you know what, this was the deal, the deal is being modified, I'm done with it, let them come back with a new proposal. But this stringing of, and constantly following along where this was the term, now this is the term, that's what I was voting. So I just want to be very clear. I mean, straw polling on there. Okay. I'm not saying we should never have a deal with him. I'm just saying the deal has to be, I mean, our job, as Joe pointed out, and we all know, is to represent the people of East Long Meadow who elected us. You know what? And that is it. And if the deal becomes anything less than that, forget about it. It has to be strictly, that's our fiduciary duty, is to represent the people of East Long Meadow. And if we engage in a discussion, and that discussion, the other side says, well, that's the deal, but now we're changing the deal, I don't have a place for that kind of stuff. I'd rather have it square and good faith from I'm not suggesting any bad faith, I'm saying external factors, you know, reconsidering it, fine. Etch-a-sketch, start over, let's get something, Hampden, you come to us and tell us something that's fair, and we work off what's in it for East Long Meadow point of view.
So I know
and
there's.
it seems like, and I was of the same mindset, right? Because essentially we're entering into a marriage, and a very complicated one. An intermunicipal agreement is no joke. So you have to be comfortable with what you're entering into. So now, having said that, since our last meeting, something changed. But the full board wasn't made aware of the change. So we should not have reacted and rushed out. And that's where I think the miscommunication between different people trying to accomplish the same thing ends up being in a, okay, now here we are today. So, and I think, just so we're clear for everybody, including myself, like, we're not going to look over the contract. That's what your job is. I think, maybe what, makes sense is to take one more look, make sure we're doing our due diligence, and then, you keep on going, give us a summary of that. If you think a subcommittee is in the best interest, then absolutely we'll do that, and then we can make a recommendation to the full board and put this thing to bed.
Well, I'm concerned as to what a subcommittee, if they're not going to be looking at a contract, so what exactly is the purpose of the subcommittee that we wouldn't bring to the full council and have a discussion in open session with the full council, with the attorney, that I bring a recommendation that we bring to the full council?
And maybe that's fair in this situation, but we definitely need information earlier to process, because there's still a lot of data to look at, and that's where we were having that conversation, and there's 5 department heads, and we're volleying stuff back and forth, and it was, in hindsight, it was unproductive, right? It was opinion based, and then we're reacting like I had the same reaction to him. I don't negotiate like that. I don't work like that. So I had the same reaction that Don did. So I thought I was being pretty clear as well. Like, no, just there's nothing to talk about. Move on. Let's go and execute our plan now. So that's all I ask. That's all I need, I guess, is some, give me 48 hours, give me information a couple days before. So I don't know. It's up to you guys. I mean, I guess we can not do what I guess I'm going to shut up and talking too much. But we don't need a subcommittee necessarily.
If we do have a subcommittee, _10 times, it has to have clear marching orders.
Yes.
That the subcommittee's focus is within our purview, within the charter of what our responsibility is. And that's the key. It cannot be into stepping into there. Just like, for instance, I chair the Planning Matters Subcommittee. And we're very clear. We're not a planning board. We focus strictly on matters within the scope as it appears before the town council, and not stepping into the job of the planning board. So I think what we need is clear definition before we create the subcommittee of what it's all about, and to make sure that we're not crossing into the executive branch of our government, that we keep the focus on our powerful legislative branch that we are. And I think that I would support. But if the definition isn't clear on what we're accomplishing, then I think we need to say, time out, let's get it into the next agenda, let's have clear definitions, bounce it through town council to make sure we're not, like I said, not becoming a planning board. I'm not crossing into their turf. We're focusing on what we need. That's just my take.
But to Denise's point, in this particular case, what can a subcommittee do? If we can't negotiate figures or a contract, what are they going to do? They're going to go in and
this is what I would envision the subcommittee being able to do. Unlike when we had the opportunity to visit the Chicopee proposal back in the fall, we had before us, and if you go back and go through your pile of agendas, the proposed contract, a written opinion from Jim Donahue, and then we took a vote in open session. We have not had the benefit of looking at a proposed contract. I would agree with, I think Joe said, we only have opinions from department heads. And in two of those cases, they're subjective. We don't have tangible data in front of us. I would charge the subcommittee with meeting with Mr. Maynard and Denise and using the department heads, the chiefs and Sarah and Ryan from IT as they felt necessary to receive the pros and cons from their perspective. So I would ask our council to give us the pros of that document and the negatives of it, the proposed contract. We are not, other than present company here excluded, we're not lawyers, and it is not our job to micromanage a language in a contract. But I want more information than what we got 2 weeks ago.
Madam President, just a point of clarification. I'm happy to meet with any subcommittee that's
And I don't see this
formed.
as a prolonged situation either.
But as far as I know, there is no proposed contract at this point. There was some negotiation back and forth, but there was never any kind of consensus from one side or the other as to what the contract being proposed was.
Did you not meet with, and I don't remember the woman's name from Hampden?
I did, Rose Crowley. I did meet with her, and we went back and forth so that I could understand what her proposals were, and told her I'd bring that back to the council and
And there's
talk about
no
it.
document that you are going back and forth on?
There is a document,
So
but there's
isn't-
there's no agreement on the terms.
Well, I understand that, but we would look to you to say, this is the document that Ms. Crowley and I are working on.
Sure.
And this is my best legal opinion.
Sure, happy to do that.
To say, here's the good points, here's the not so good points. And if you're asking me for my recommendation, which the subcommittee is going to ask, this is what I would do.
Sure.
And the same with our town manager and our chiefs. And then the committee can come back to us, make a recommendation, and if we need then, if your recommendation is to, to use an executive session to hammer out the fine points, then we do that. But to the extent that we don't violate the spirit of an executive session or an IMA, the intermunicipal agreement, do that in open session and then give the manager direction.
That's fine. It sounds as if you're doing what Mr. Ford has proposed, and that is backing up to a point before the last council
Correct.
meeting and
Yes.
and getting to where I thought we were going to get at that last meeting.
Yeah.
So to put in writing recommendations, which,
I would
why do we
agree,
need a
and
subcommittee to do that when we can do that?
Yeah, so I'm thinking, if you're gonna give a subcommittee recommendations and the subcommittee's gonna give us the recommendations, why don't you just give us the recommendations?
And then we
And skip the
discuss it in
middle layer of
open
bureaucracy.
session.
I'm happy to
Can
do.
we do that in open session, or should that go back to executive?
I believe you can do that in open session. I don't think that involves the negotiation strategy to the detriment of the town to discuss the pros and cons of entering into a
Right.
contract.
Yeah, if you give us your opinion on, nothing financial, no specific terms, but say, I think this contract is a good idea for the town, or I don't think this contract
Well,
is a good
there
idea
are,
for the town.
inherent in the agreement will be financial language.
But he can give us an overview,
Right.
you know, because he can't give the subcommittee an overview, because they can't do anything with it, because we can't do anything financial anyways. So,
No, but the purpose of a subcommittee is to do the homework and come back, to the body and say, this is what we have gathered based on legal opinion, and this is what we recommend, just like we've done with other
But
subcommittees.
that's what his job is and her
Yeah.
job is, so why can't they just do it here?
exactly.
Why can't, here's another thought. Instead of a subcommittee, why don't we just have our council president be able to interact with them, as opposed to creating it under the purview of us, but as opposed to being our representative, coming in and interact, doing some fact-finding, and then after the fact-finding, determine whether that information should be shared in the general meeting or go into executive session to discuss it.
And pretty basically,
That way we're not
that's what we've done with
stepping
COVID
in,
so
and we don't
far.
have to,
So that seems like president of council is always
Yeah.
a lot more aware of the day-to-day than I bring to the whole council.
Yeah,
So
that would be a
that's,
good time.
Kathy, would you be comfortable with that?
You would still be soliciting department heads
I
and
would
Yes.
think that.
whoever
Right.
to get the
Absolutely.
pertinent
Yes,
information.
yes.
But it doesn't
So
create a
what's-
false sense of, like, we have control. Everything's still within the charter.
I look at the subcommittee as an
I'd be good with
organized
that.
meeting
Yeah,
of
I'm
the
with that
talents
too.
that are
I'm with that too.
participating and would be attending those meetings to
But they seem to already
offer any
have a
information at all.
subcommittee
We have-
of
we have-
them, and we're just having our presence in that committee already. And that keeps it consistent with the charter, and we have a representative, the president of our council.
I'm good.
Do we have, yeah, is that something we have to vote on? Or no, just?
Do we need
You're
to
the
vote on
boss,
this?
you
or-
can name yourself.
I can't.
I mean, I think it's just basically a show of support if we just
Yeah.
take a motion to do it as opposed to a directive. I mean, I would make a motion that our council president represent the council to fact-find and gain information from this already existing committee, and to, because we do have an interest, albeit not an interest encroaching on their power, but an interest nonetheless, and that I think gives a clear message, and it keeps it within the consistency of the chart, consistent with the charter. So I'll make that motion.
So move.
There's a motion on the floor to,
To give you more work.
to ask the council president to meet with town council and town manager and any relevant department heads to get a more descriptive opinion of the IMA, and to then, I'm going to think we can get this done so that on August 14th, the council can give direction or not.
That's been our goal. all
Right.
along.
Any other discussion?
It hasn't been seconded yet.
No, I made the motion,
It was
you
seconded.
seconded it.
No, I moved it. but that's-
Okay, you moved it, okay, so, somebody else, I'll second the motion then.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a direction. Mr. Fenny, are we
I thought I just saw him.
good to go? Okay.
He's been in the
Why
car
don't we
all
get rid
the
of,
time.
why don't we get rid of the last couple of things? while-
Okay.
While he's indisposed.
All right. Item 8C, reorganization of council has occurred. Under 8D, financial matters. Mr. Florence, nothing? It appears we have no public hearings. Everybody's too tired. There is no reason to go into executive session this evening? Okay. And so, that said, can I have a motion to return to item 7C, municipal separate storm sewer system, say that 4 times, MS4. Presentation by Mr. Fenny and Mr. Sivian.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Gentlemen, the floor is yours again. Bruce, you can take it when you leave.
Thank you very much. I'm Bruce Fenny, Superintendent, Public Works. I have with me this evening Fred Sivian from the Mass DEP to discuss with the council how the new MS4 permit is going to impact the town of East Long Meadow and answer any questions you may have. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. Sivian.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to come here tonight. The new MS4 permit started on July 1st, 2018. It's now in effect. And what I wanted to do was to basically do 2 things. Explain to you where this permit came from, answer any questions that you have about the permit, and then help walk you through a summary of the major requirements of the permit. I think the thing that 260 Massachusetts towns are facing is an increasingly detailed set of requirements to reduce pollution from stormwater. Your town, many other towns have been managing stormwater for decades, certainly back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, keeping water off of people's property, making sure basements don't flood and the like. What's new about stormwater is the realization that rain, when it falls on parking lots and on roofs, other places, it gathers whatever pollutants are there and takes them into local rivers and streams. Now, I'm old enough to have been around during the first Earth Day and can remember the times when there were a relatively small number of very big pipes from wastewater treatment plants and from industrial facilities that were putting pollutants directly into rivers and streams. As a society, we've done a tremendous job in the last 48 years reducing those amounts of pollutants that have come from those small, relatively small number of large pipes. But when we at state DEP and federal EPA look at rivers and streams and do sampling and all, we find that most rivers and streams, including here in Massachusetts, have too many pollutants in them to meet federal and state standards for water quality. They're not swimmable or fishable. And when we look at what the sources of those pollutants are, surprisingly, it's not mostly the wastewater and industrial facilities. It's stormwater, something that we all deal with. We've got stormwater running down our sidewalks, running into our streets and all. So as a society, we're all contributing pollutants to local rivers and streams. In 2003, the federal EPA adopted the first MS4 permit, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit. So since 2003, Longmeadow and 239 other towns have been taking actions to reduce pollutants from stormwater. What's different about this new permit is the amount of detail that's within it. It makes it very difficult for people like Mr. Fenning to be able to do his job, and also expands the scope of responsibility to include more than just DPW. While the 2003 permit had, depending on how you counted it, anywhere from 30 to 3 dozen requirements, this new permit has about 225 separate requirements. It is very detailed. For example, one of the requirements is that you need to sample every outfall that you have, the place where your stormwater system exits into a local river and stream during the first 3 years of the permit. Let's do that during dry weather to see if there's any flow. Now think about that. If there's no flow coming out of a storm, if you haven't had any rain, and there's flow coming out of a stormwater system, it's not stormwater. It might be something else. It might have pollutants in it. It might have pollutants of human waste in it. So there's a requirement in the permit at the end of 3 years to sample each of your outfalls. I'm from the town of Dedham. I'm on the Conservation Commission there. When I talked to Joe Flanagan, the DPW chief, and asked him, so Joe, how many outfalls are there in Dedham? He says, there are about 750. And I think all of us have realized that stormwater systems grow over time. The other thing that's important to realize, and people may not know this, is that stormwater systems don't have any treatment in them. Unlike a sewage system, anything that goes into a stormwater system goes directly into rivers and streams. My friend Joe Flanagan was popping catch basins near where my house is, pretty close to the Charles River, popped the tops of the catch basins and found a whole bunch of blue dog waste bags in there. Now, it wasn't that people were trying to pollute the Charles River. Lord knows we had enough of that going on. But they knew that there's a sewer system there, and they think sewage has treatment, and so maybe it's the right place to be able to put the bags. So one of the requirements in the permit is for there to be some pretty intensive public education to residents, to industries, to commercial facilities, and the like, to be able to explain what stormwater pollution is, where it comes from, and what we as a town and individuals can do about it. One of the hazards of having me come out here is that I can talk about stormwater all night, so I want to pause and see if you have any questions now.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
What about those 100 other towns? You're not naming all the towns. You said 230 something?
Yeah, this 2018 permit affects 260 towns. It's basically the larger towns in Massachusetts, not all of them. And you might be thankful that that reach of requirements doesn't go all the way down to towns that have a population of 200, 400, 600 people.
So it's just the smaller towns?
Yeah, the EPA made its decision about which towns require coverage based on population density. There's requirements for the permit accrue to a town that has an urbanized area, quote unquote. East Longmeadow is almost all urbanized area. There's some portion in the southeastern part of the town that's not urbanized. There are some towns that have a great expanse of their town is not urbanized and not subject to the permit. Council members?
Yeah.
Okay. If I can approach the council.
Certainly.
What I'm doing is here is handing out a summary of major requirements.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, it's not a summary of the requirements. It's not all the requirements. It's the major requirements. The idea is to give you an idea of the extent of scope. You're welcome. Extent of the, so I have any for the public also? Yes, ma'am. So what I want to do is highlight some of these requirements. The first requirement is filing for coverage under the permit. Each of the towns covered by the MS4 permit has to file what's called a notice of intent. The date here says September 29th, which is a Saturday. They will be due actually on October 1st, which is a Monday. And that's basically a summary of the status of your stormwater system. It's an application to EPA. It's subject to public review. After EPA accepts that, assuming all the information is there that's needed to be there, EPA issues a letter to the town saying you have coverage in it. The major requirement in the first year of the permit, you see some of the bullets here. The first bullet is submit stormwater management plan. The stormwater management plan is the document that towns will use in order to demonstrate to EPA, to DEP, and whoever else wants to know how you will be meeting the requirements of the permit. The permit requirements do not kick in all in the first year. They are staged, as you will see. I gave you an example earlier of having dry weather screening at all your outfalls by the end of year 3. You could wait until year 3 to do that. You could start doing that now. That's up to each town. It's how they want to handle that. But that stormwater management permit is the document that you'll be able to use to be able to explain how you're going to meet the permit to external audiences, to internal audiences, to yourselves, to citizens who will be helping to pay for this, what work you'll be doing. It's a way of also costing out what the permit will end up costing East Longmeadow. There are some other requirements there. One's a written illicit discharge detection and elimination program. The illicit discharge detection and elimination is basically anything. Stormwater is supposed to be in stormwater systems, and because stormwater systems have no treatment, anything else is supposed to be kept out of it. So whether that's people pouring oil into catch basins, whether it's illicit connections from people's houses or from businesses that are accidentally piped into the stormwater system instead of to a sanitary sewer system and the like. You have a responsibility under the permit to locate those and cure them when you find them. 2 years after the permit, the first bullet is a report on receiving waters. We use some jargon in talking about waters, whether they are impaired or not. And that means whether they meet federal and state water quality standards, if they're swimmable and fishable. Most towns in Massachusetts, their surface waters are impaired to some extent. And it's sort of the old question about what do you do when you have that knowledge? What do you do about that? And the permit has some fairly modest requirements for what towns need to be able to do to be able to reduce the amount of pollutants that are going into their impaired waters. You'll note on the third bullet under the 2 years after effective date is a local ordinance or equivalent to enact new stormwater retention requirements. That's the subject of some controversy these days. The permit is supposed to go into effect on July 1st, 2017, last year, but the permit was appealed. And there are some national interests, National Home Builders Association, that are helping appeal the permit, so it's not just about Massachusetts. At last June, some of the appellants asked the federal EPA to delay the implementation for a permit for a year. EPA agreed to that last year. The same groups made a request in May of this year to hold off on implementation of the permit, and EPA's answer was no, we're going to start it up. That said, there is a court case going on. It's going through the process now. There's a mediation process that looks at some of the requirements of the permit. I need to let you know that, just so you have that information, that it is under appeal at this time. The local ordinance or equivalent basically says that when there's a new development or redevelopment of more than an acre inside your urbanized area, the town has to adopt different rules on how to manage stormwater on the site. Your Conservation Commission has been doing this kind of work since 1997. They are a good source of information for how to manage stormwater with new developments and redevelopments. There are requirements to infiltrate stormwater from parking lots and all, put it into catch basins, put it into infiltration basins, put it into dry wells, have it seep into the ground.
there are also requirements for redevelopments too. But the federal requirements in the permit are going to cause you to have to look at those local ordinances, and that means you're probably going to be involved in your planning board. Some towns it's the planning board, some towns, in my town, it's the Conservation Commission, that is going to have to revise the rules for developments and new developments, developments and redevelopments. Going on to page 2. East Longmeadow has been doing a very good job of its mapping of its stormwater system. The initial map of the stormwater system is due at the end of year 2.
Excuse me, did you say has or has not?
Has.
Good.
Has
That's the
been
word
doing a
we're
good
looking
job.
for.
Yes, ma'am, I checked that. 3 years after the effective date, must have completed all dry weather field sampling at all outfalls. I mentioned that as a requirement earlier. 4 years after the effective date, these requirements for analyzing street design to reduce impervious cover, what EPA calls impervious cover, and assessing local regulations to allow green infrastructure are pretty important. We used to think that you could start paving over a piece of property and you could pave up to about 10% and it wouldn't cause any harm to local rivers and streams. But there's good data saying that every time you increase the amount of impervious surface, you go from 3% to 5%, or 5% to 7%, you're causing harm to surface waters. Maybe a small amount of harm, but harm nonetheless. So EPA is concentrating on getting cities and towns in Massachusetts to reduce the amount of impervious area that they build. My mother lives in a 55 and older development that was built in the 1970s. What it was struck when I was visiting her a couple of weeks ago was how wide the streets were. Really, there's a lot of golf carts in that area and some small number of cars, but the streets didn't really need to be 36 foot curb to curb. It could be smaller. So this requirement says that East Longmeadow needs to look at its development rules to see if there are opportunities for reducing the amount of impervious surface that would be created. 5 years after the effective date, again, I'm just talking about some of these major requirements. There's a mention here of a Charles River watershed phosphorus TMDL, lake and pond phosphorus TMDLs. What a TMDL is, it stands for the total maximum daily load that can go into river and stream. Imagine you've got a pond in your town, and every pond can handle some amount of pollution. So what's that amount of pollution it can handle? And when we assess the pond, when we do studies of it, we find the pollution is up above what the pond can handle. So these TMDLs ask the question, what's the total maximum daily load of pollutants that pond or river can handle and still be swimmable and fishable? And then try to reduce the pollutants that come down to that level. Practically all towns in Massachusetts are subject to TMDLs. So those TMDL requirements start kicking in year 5. In some cases extend out into years 10 and 20. The last bullet in the 5 years after the effective date is the public outreach program. Must have already been completed at the end of 5 years. There's the messages to the 4 audiences, supposed to have effectiveness of messages evaluated and modified. What many towns are doing is putting out those messages early on. At least for towns that have town meeting, my town has representative town meeting, some towns have an open town meeting, getting the information into the hands of the citizens so that they know where water pollution comes from, that part of it's coming from stormwater, that part of it's coming from the operations of the town. And that can help support efforts to be able to allocate some of your budget to being able to do stormwater work. I force myself to.
No.
Any federal or state money coming our way?
Actually, there has been some. What DEP has been doing with, I need to say, I get a lot of support from Commissioner Marty Suberg of Department of Environmental Protection. He has been the chief proponent of what are called stormwater coalitions. Basically, DEP has been funding, since 2012, groups of towns to work together to be able to reduce pollution from stormwater. Imagine, these are mostly smaller towns, include towns as big as East Longmeadow too. Instead of each town trying to figure out how to write a stormwater pollution prevention plan for a transfer station that's in your urbanized area, the towns get grouped together and write together as a group one model document and then each of the towns take that back and share it. There have been over $1.2 million in state and federal funds that have been given to 10 stormwater coalitions and include about 140 towns. So while we don't have a program set up specifically for helping individual towns do individual work on their MS4
About the
permits.
Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
I
Can we
am a
avail
member of
ourselves
that,
to
and I do attend those meetings often, yes.
Can we get some of that money their ways to help us write this?
Yes, it's actually, they're working on public outreach videos, radio messages, and everything else that we're gonna be sharing with the town. So yes, they're a great asset to the town of East Long Meadow with other communities, and obviously helping us to move forward. Actually, I met Fred at a MS4 kind of a training program that a lot of this information was given out and given us kind of a toolkit or templates to go by moving forward, especially the IDE plan that I will be doing myself, and some of the other items that I guess I've given you guys as far as our supplemental budget. It's kind of giving you our 5-year plan kind of in a nutshell, and how much that cost is for the town of East Long Meadow or it's for the department. So we do have some areas to draw from as far as some education and to help us move forward. And like you said, I met Fred at one of those training sessions through UMass.
So Bruce, this is a pretty comprehensive mandate
Yes.
for every town in Massachusetts. Without trying to nail you down, how are you feeling, other than you have a tremendous amount of added work, but are you feeling like you're going to be able to
It's
get
going to
your
be a
arms
learning
around it?
curve. I've actually didn't plan on something that came up today. Actually, our street sweepings and our catch basin cleanings. They need to be disposed of as hazardous waste. We have quite a bit of a pile up at the transfer station. Based on the pile now, it's $50,000. So I didn't take that into consideration. There is certain things that we can do to reutilize some street sweepings through a BUD program, a beneficial use determination through the DEP to file for, so we can use that cleanings for under road surface projects, things of that nature.
So are you saying that you could test it to see if it's?
Yeah, there's certain, this is, like you said, it's real new. I haven't dug into it deeply yet. I just, like I said, I didn't take that into consideration. This was a pile that was kind of been there, but finding out that, okay, this is gonna be a problem. So anyways.
What about salt and road salt in the winter and so forth?
Well, this is the good thing about road salt, is it just, I guess, dissipates. That's the difference where communities are moving away from sand, because that's gonna be considered a contaminant once it gets in a catch basin. So a lot of communities are getting away from road sand and using strictly salt. Obviously, the salt deteriorates things much faster. Our catch basins and everything else are not in all bad shape, but yeah. So we're learning. We've actually implemented some Survey 1, 2, 3 program. It's actually when we do go out and do catch basin cleanings and repairs. It's actually taking measurements of the sump, the pipe diameters, and all that information pertaining to that structure when it was inspected. Obviously, it's going to be part of the report to the DEP and the EPA, which we started months ago. We've already mapped all our stormwater system. We have 2 students out in the field. We've already assessed over 200 outfalls. We're waiting for our test kits to come in and start doing sampling, and then obviously tracing those contaminants, if we do find any, upstream, and follow that where that contaminant's coming in. So like you said, it's going to be it's a learning process, I guess, moving forward. But I think we're pretty much ahead of the game so far. But like you said, I'll be coming to you guys, obviously, for funding sources, and I do have some funding sources planned for an enterprise fund, which I'll be meeting with Sarah and Denise to discuss and presenting that to you.
With regards to the cost, I think Mr. Sibian mentioned the cost of a permit. I don't understand what that means.
What I was referring to was the cost of meeting the requirements of the permit. When the permit says you have to do a public education program, there's a cost that goes along with that. To do the outfall screening, the permit itself doesn't cost anything to be able to get that, but the work that's needed in order to meet the permit requirements can be fairly substantial.
Okay, and that's part of what you were talking about with, there's coalitions that are forming to write a community permit, so that it can encompass many other towns.
Well, to do some of the work for the permit, instead of doing it each town as a tub in its own bottom, coming up with a template.
Yep.
Right, and that's the thing too, every community isn't the same, so you're using obviously a template, but filling in the blanks that the other communities may not have, or different quantities of catch basin, things like that, so.
But it does sound like everyone's in the same boat.
Yes.
Trying to get ahead, get on the learning curve and
Yes.
be as efficient as possible with it.
I've actually met with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission a few weeks ago. There's communities that are not even considering this.
They're in denial.
Over
For
the
now.
bridge, they're not even doing anything about it because they don't
It's a
have the
river,
money
too.
to do it.
That's what she
So they're
said.
not doing it.
Denial.
So,
Scary.
like you said, I think we're in pretty good shape. Previous superintendents have already started the process, knowing this is gonna happen. It's been in the queue for how many years, saying this is gonna happen, so, we've been preparing for a long time, so I think, like you said, we're ahead of the game, more than other communities.
And I have to commend Bruce for being a fairly new superintendent and really being ahead of the curve here. He's really done
Thank you.
some creative things, using those interns and stuff, and just being very diligent in trying to get us where we need to be. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
one last question. How many total outfalls do we have?
385. And
I'm a
that's,
numbers guy, I was
that's
just curious.
about, yes.
If there's 750 and was it Dedham?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just curious.
One thing, last thing is, you'll know on the bottom of page 2 is my telephone number and my email address. Any of you or members of the public that have any questions about stormwater, my job as a stormwater coordinator to answer anyone's questions about federal, state, or local stormwater rules. I'll go anywhere to any time to talk about stormwater. So if you have any questions, privately, informally, or formally, please feel free to use the resource that you already paid for.
Thank you.
Well, you're a content expert on this field, so there's a question that I've always wondered myself. I hear it many times in the conservation or planning process. Encroachment on a river. What determines what's a river?
There are definitions in the State Wetlands Act and the State Riverways Act about what a river is. This relates to sort of what water of the United States is. And the definitions are quite specific. It includes what you think of as a flowing river and a pond. It also includes wetlands, what you think of as bogs, swamps, things that are wet to, you have difficulty walking in during part of the year, are all, by legal definition in the State Wetlands Act, considered to be protected resources. And I urge you to talk to your Conservation Commission about that. The resource itself is supposed to be protected. There are buffer areas that are supposed to try to keep development away. There are no-build areas around some of those protected resources. Other areas we try as much as possible to keep development away.
So it doesn't have to be a flowing source of water.
Correct, sir.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sivian, for joining us
Thanks for
tonight.
coming.
Bruce,
Thank you.
good
Thanks,
work.
Bruce.
That's why I invited Mr. Sibian. You can see he knows what he's talking about.
Thanks for the opportunity, I appreciate it.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome. It would appear that we have no other items to deal with this evening, other than to entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.